Welcome to another edition of Dianne Andrews in Black and White, an open discussion about the issues you don't want to talk about and the arts you need to know. Now, here's your host, Dianne Andrews.
Welcome to In Black and White. I'm your host, Dianne Andrews. I want to thank you all for tuning in to us today. And I also want to thank my audience for being here today. And YouTube, I would really like to thank for your tremendous support of our programs and shows over the last month. Today, I brought back two of the panelists who were on our religious panel because what is called Jihad Wars, or Holy Wars of the East, which we will discuss that name as to what we call it over here on the West. But there's such tension in the Middle East right now that I have put together a panel with three top ministers or practitioners of the Nation of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. I have Rabbi Thomas Gardner with me. We have Brother Daryl Muhammad, and we have Pastor Raymond Johnson from Living Faith. Today we're going to start, we hear all these terms out on the news media, in the papers, about what's going on in the Middle East. And it's very alarming and it's very threatening because everyone feels sorry for this jihad war, or holy war, or just war period where people are dying. We hear the term Boko Haram, which means that is located, what we call in America, a terrorist group that is in Nigeria, who we know kidnapped 350 Nigerian girls, and some are still in their captivity. We have Hamas, which means strength or zeal, and that is in the Gaza Strip. We're going to put a friendship wheel up in a second just for you to see some of these terrorist groups, and it's called the Middle East Friendship Wheel chart that you'll see that we have very few friends left, America does, in the Middle East. We're going to talk a little about Fatah, which is out of the West Bank, and then we're going to talk some about ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria that is driving Christians out of the country of Iraq. As you see on your screen, this is a map of the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is on the Mediterranean Sea, and it is near, all these countries are very close together. We have Syria there, we have Egypt there, we have Israel, right within the same boundaries. It's like going from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. It's like going from New York City to New Jersey, or Diamond Bar, California to Los Angeles, California. And they're going from 2 to 3 countries at the same time it takes us to go from one city to another. So these cities are very densely populated, especially the Gaza Strip. There are about 1.8 million people on this area, which is 5 miles long and 5 miles wide and 26 miles long. So today I'm going to ask, to begin with, the Rabbi and Brother Daryl to talk to us about Hamas and what's going on between the war. I will call it a war. Would you both agree that it is a war between Israel? I know Israel was deemed a state in 1948, and the next day they start fighting. And basically there have been wars between Israel and Arabs or Palestinians, Muslims, since 1948 and before that. So tell me what you think is going on, and can it ever be solved? Rabbi?
Okay. Well, I think that in this case, what we're looking at is you had a situation where Hamas was sending bombs continuously into the state of Israel. They were also digging these tunnels. We didn't know the extent of the tunnels into Israel. There is some rumor now that they were planning a major offensive into Israel in a few months' time.
But again, that's a rumor. There's no concrete evidence.
Well, there are concrete tunnels that have stretched from the Gaza Strip into Israel, and we know that some of them already have been used to attack Israelis and to kill Israelis. And I think that it was in the face of this that Israel needed to go in and to try to put an end to the rocket fire and to destroy the tunnels.
What the tunnel purpose is for them to be able to go straight into Israel underground because of our Iron Dome defensive system. When I say our, America paid pretty much for most of the Iron Dome defensive systems around Tel Aviv and other cities in Israel, correct?
Well, actually, America did pay for an earlier kind of missile defense system, but the Iron Dome was developed by Israel. Right now, Israel has asked the United States for
$225
millions of dollars so that they can rebuild their Iron Dome defense. That they've used up a lot of the missiles. And in return, they're going to share the missile technology with the United States.
So it's a barter system. You give me the money, I give you the technology we developed, kind of?
Israel, as we saw in the chart that you put up, Israel is one of America's few allies in that region. And America has been supporting Israel for some time, ever since the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. America has given a large amount of money every year to Israel and to Egypt as part of the peace treaty.
Now, you mentioned our friends. Of course, it was Israel, it was Egypt on there, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq are the only 4 friends out of those 13 elements on that chart, which were groups like Al Qaeda and some other cities and countries. And I would question if we really are friends right now with all those 4. I don't think we're great friends with what's going on in Iraq. I don't know. I think it's complicated with Egypt of what's going on. But Brother Daryl, what do you have to say about what he just said about the tunnels? We know the tunnels were supposedly being built. I read something that North Korea was helping fund some of Hamas building of the tunnels. Did you read anything about that?
I will say this about the tunnels. Certainly, the ability to travel back and forth does have military implications, but it also has what you would call humanitarian implications. As you know, Gaza has been under a blockade by Israel. And of course,
when you say a blockade, they can't go freely?
They can't move freely, and they have been from the sea as well as from the land. There has been like a stranglehold on the movement of materials in and out of the Gaza Strip.
Do you agree with that, Rabbi, and why?
I would like to say that Israel has controlled the materials because they're afraid of materials going in that are going to be used to attack Israel, as in fact many materials have been.
Well, what kind of materials are we talking about?
But there has not been a. Israel has always supplied food and medicine and that kind of material into the Gaza Strip. They're continuing to supply it. They continue to supply it even while the attacks were going on. They set up a field hospital.
But they killed a lot of civilians, correct? Yes. In Hamas, in that area, in the Gaza Strip area, a lot of people.
We don't know how many of the people who were killed were civilians, but certainly some of the people were civilians, and that is absolutely a tragedy. It's a terrible thing, and every innocent person who was killed is really a tragedy. And we know that there were people who were killed.
But why should Israel, as you say, they made sure they got food and things like that, but wouldn't the Gaza Strip people, the Hamas people, which are mostly Sunnis, I think that's sad, wouldn't they want to get their own food from however they want to get their food? Why should they supply it for them?
If we can interject a little bit here, you know, because ever since Hamas was promised by the United States under the Bush administration, and they were also
Bush number 2.
We had Bush number 2. In order to become, they were told to literally, instead of becoming an armed group that would oppose the militarization of that area by Israel, they were told to become political and to run for office.
Which
they did. And after they did that, after they were promised by the United States.
How do you know they were promised by the United States? Was this published?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, they were told to put down their arms and become politicians, which they did. And they won overwhelmingly the election.
Right.
After they
beat
won the
Fatah
election,
out of the West, out of the
they
West
got
Bank.
more votes than Fatah.
Arafat's old Palestinian.
And once that happened, there was a stranglehold put on the stronghold of Hamas.
Was this still under
Gaza.
Bush, or was this under the president after Bush?
No, all of this happened during the Bush administration.
Rabbi,
you
want to say
that.
something? Okay, what do you have to say to this?
That Hamas did run for political office. They did win overwhelmingly
Right.
in the Gaza Strip. But the problem is they never put down their weapons. They never agreed to accept the fact that Israel exists. And they continue, even today, to have in their charter the idea that all of Israel must be destroyed and all the Jews of Israel must be killed.
Now, I will agree with him on that. One of the leaders and founding sons of Hamas was on CNN. Now, I don't know if he's mad with his father or something, but he was saying this weekend that Hamas wants the extinction of Israel. They do not want to coexist.
Well, I will
His
say
last
that-
name was Yusuf.
I will say this, that Hamas and the leaders of Hamas understand that Israel is a political and geographic reality, a reality that they must deal with and have been dealing with for quite some time. But the stranglehold that has been put on Gaza, and the disrespect of the vote of the people of the Palestinian area has to be looked at. The continued targeted killings by the Netanyahu administration and regime on the leadership in Gaza, as well as the West Bank, has gone on unabated for years.
Well, doesn't the West Bank have 500,000 Jewish people living in it out of the 2.8 million? I think 500,000 are Jewish.
Well, if we want to talk about...
And they're called occupiers, correct, Rabbi?
Well, you may call them occupiers. Some
I
people
don't
call them
personally,
occupiers.
but yeah.
Some people call them settlers. And you know, the Israelis who live in the West Bank are not really part of the problem. The fact remains that if there was a peace treaty between Israel and the Palestinians, we know that the West Bank, most of the West Bank would go to the Palestinians. Some of the larger Israeli settlements that are near the Green Line, the border, the 67 border, would be subsumed into Israel, and in exchange, some other territory that is now in Israel would be given to the West Bank.
Now, Jerusalem is in the West Bank. Is that correct?
And there are many also settlements that would be turned over to the Palestinians in the West Bank, just as when Israel unilaterally left Gaza and said, "Okay, Gaza is yours now. You run it the way you want to run it." There were lots of Israelis, Jewish Israelis, who lived there, and they had to move out, and they left their homes behind. So the fact that the settlements are there is not an overwhelming problem. Jerusalem is a big problem. Jerusalem
is in the West Bank, correct?
Jerusalem is right on the border of the 48 Green Line, so that the what they call Western Jerusalem or modern
Eastern
Jerusalem
yeah.
was at that time in 48 was part of Israel, whereas the old city of Jerusalem or Eastern Jerusalem was at that time part of Jordan.
But answer this for me, Rabbi. In 1990 plus, wasn't it said that by the United Nations that Israel should be out of the West Bank and that they are occupiers?
The United Nations have said that Israel should withdraw from territories captured in the Six-Day War, and the interesting question is that it's not clear whether they meant all of the territories or some of the territories, and that's where the argument lies, that Israel will say, well, we are willing to withdraw from some of the territories, and the Palestinians will say, no, you have to withdraw from all of the territories. And that word was deliberately left vague so that both the United States and the Russians would agree to back that resolution.
In both of y'all's words, it sounds like a lot of confusion, a lot of things left out that should have been written in. But do you think there's ever any resolution to this in the near future?
Well,
what's going on today?
I will say this, that here's one of the things that Minister Farrakhan always says. He says that justice, peace is predicated on justice, and justice is predicated on truth. And if you really think about it, the truth of it is, regardless of what anybody says, that the Palestinians are in a horrible condition, a condition that is brought about by almost like an apartheid situation. There are roads that only Palestinians drive on, roads that only Jewish people drive on, all through Palestine. And they are subjected to a lot of oppression from the military occupation. Now, the thing about it is when the rabbi talked about renouncing violence, the army, the Israeli Defense Force, by the very nature of it being an army, is violent. So nobody has put down their guns.
Isn't
Israel,
any army
that's what I'm
violent?
saying.
Your army, I mean, not yours,
Everybody's
but Hamas' army would be
you see what I'm
violent
saying?
also.
So
yeah.
nobody has put down their arms. I mean, Israel has F-16s.
Again, my question, do we think there's a peace, or
There's
at least, I know
possibility
there's a
for peace.
ceasefire right now, but do you think this will ever be solved? Quickly.
It will be solved.
Okay.
It will be solved at some point in the future.
I have to say, when this word apartheid comes up, it's a terrible word that's being used, and it's not applicable in this case. You know, there are Muslims and Christians and Arabs who are Christian, Arabs who are Muslim, who live in Israel.
Right.
They have all the rights of every Israeli citizen. They vote. There was one of the Supreme Court justices was Arab. They have members in the Knesset. And when you're talking about in the West Bank, it's not part of Israel. So if there are special roads for people with Israeli license plates, whether you're Arab or whether you're not Arab, you can use those roads. So it's
Quickly,
not a
Rabbi,
question. It's not a question of apartheid.
Go over to Iraq. We're going to talk about the tremendous problem with ISIS there. Do you think this will be solved quickly?
It will not be solved quickly.
Soon.
It will not be solved soon. But God willing, it'll be solved someday. And I think that Israel needs to understand the feeling of the Palestinians. At the same time, I do believe that all of the Palestinians with arms have to convince Israel that they don't plan to destroy the land and kill innocent civilians. And once they do that, I think that we'll have gone a long way to work towards peace.
Well, let's hope we have peace in that area soon. I'm turning now to Pastor Raymond Johnson, and we're going to talk about ISIS in Iraq, which is the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, Pastor?
Well, over the last several years, we've had quite a bit in the news concerning this particular group and its philosophy. As the previous guests were speaking, all the things to me come from your philosophical and your theological position. And that's where your truths really are. Because if I say something is true, I would say it's true because the Bible says it. You would say it because the Quran says it. And you would say it because your holy book said. So that's where we stand from that. So with ISIS, they have a determination for Islamic State and a very, very intolerant Islamic State, where you mentioned before how the Christians were allowed to practice their religion. I've been to Israel and I've seen all the groups there. We've been on the bus tours, and for foreigners coming in, that's one of the shocks you get when you do go to Israel, is that you see the people in that country, they do live side by side.
Yeah.
They do business with each other. And again, depending on what newscast you're getting, they can paint a different picture.
Right.
Or spokesmen for various groups can give you their philosophy, and so it paints the whole picture in one way. With ISIS, I think it's very evident that it's not just attack against Christians, but against fellow Islamics who carry the same basic tenets of Islam. If you don't follow their strict interpretation of it, they're willing to perpetrate violence and destruction, historical sites that's valuable to more than one religious groups. It's really something that, as a globe, that we ought to be intolerant of and very vocal that this should not be allowed to go
It seems
forward.
though, I know we went in for whatever the reasons were. We removed Saddam Hussein, who was a violent man, but controlled that country. His second in command was a Christian. 10% of everybody in Iraq at that time were Christians. Now you have less than 1% of the population of 33 million people in Iraq as Christians. So, you know, sometimes we have to ask, why did we do it? What did we really gain by going in? And maybe we left too soon. We still have people in Korea defending from wars back in the 1950s, I think.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, America is the big brother for a lot of places around the globe, and so we're actually drawn in sometimes just because we have to.
But you know, our military budget is shrinking in America. The number of people and places we are going to protect, help, or maybe do evil again. I don't know. It depends on your advantage or disadvantage point out. People look at what we do in America. Of course, we think it's all good. But I don't know how we can continue to help the world if we continue to shrink the military budget.
Well, the budget is really determined by the heart of the people, the pulse of the people in the United States, because whatever party is in, without getting too deep in politics, that's what really determines your involvement in a different country. And unfortunately, the leaders in our country are elected. The dictators in countries, they rule sometime for decades.
Right.
And so they can establish something, and they use very horrible means to run the country. So it does allow your various religious sections to operate, but it also says that one person removed can now change the whole dynamic of a region.
That's right.
And so that's the danger of supporting dictators. But since the 1970s, and even before, this is the philosophy of the United States under all of our political
Well, I sure appreciate you three being here today, and hopefully we've shed some light on the names of the organizations, where they're headquartered in the Middle East, and maybe, hopefully, all we can do is pray for peace. Next, what I'm going to do is take this to our next segment, which is the Film Commissioner, Liza Kelso, and I with an interview. We're going to lighten it up a whole lot in the next segment. Thank you. Welcome back. After our issue segment, we're coming in with something light, something that we like to talk about, the arts in the state of Louisiana. We're very excited today to have the executive director of the Baton Rouge Film Commission. Her name is Liza Kelso with us. She's going to tell us all about what's going on in this exciting state of Louisiana when it comes into films and what's going on here. Thanks for being here with me, Liza.
I'm so grateful. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tell me all about the great films that are being done in this state, since we're #1 in the nation.
That's exactly right. We
production.
are #1 when it comes to feature films. We have actually surpassed Canada, an entire country, Los Angeles and New York, as well as Georgia, which is a big competitor of ours. So we're very excited about that. That was a study done by Film LA, which is a for-profit sort of film commission that serves Los Angeles. So we didn't pay for it, which was even better.
That's great. So they're unbiased. So nobody.
That's exactly right. There was absolutely
Yeah.
no tilt towards anyone in our own state. But it's really exciting.
Yes, is Georgia so big because of the Tyler Perry studio there? Is that when they become so big?
Well, Georgia, let's bring it all down to one simple thing. It's the tax credits.
Just like ours.
It very much is. We are head to head with Georgia on the tax credits.
30%.
30% with a local hire of 5%. So let's say you get 30% on all your spend that you do here in the state, including salaries, including equipment, and whatever you buy here in Louisiana. But if you hire a local employee from Louisiana that's verified by the state, that's another 5% on top. And Georgia has the same. They match us in that way. So we're always competing with the Peach State.
Right.
However, I will say that Tyler Perry does help them because he's sort of started an infrastructural, basis. But you could be the next Tyler Perry here. And
That's right. I'm the next Tyler Perry here.
I think it would be great.
Tylette Perry.
Tylette. Exactly. Come on, we need you.
That's right. Okay.
But we're doing great. We're doing really well. We have. Currently, we have 2 very large blockbuster films in town. We have one that's titled Henry Street, so I have to be quiet about the actual title. However, it's probably the worst kept secret ever, and let's just say it's fantastic and the #4. But anyway,
Can you tell us who's in it?
I can tell you Michael B. Jordan is in it. Miles.
He is cute.
Yes, he is cute. Miles Teller and Kate Mara.
Okay.
So, and then of course there's Pitch Perfect too.
Yes.
With the Good Crowd, Anna Kendrick, all the gang that's back there. So we're rocking and rolling in Baton Rouge. It's
What
exciting.
about New Orleans now and Lafayette and Shreveport?
New Orleans is doing very, very well. New Orleans is just like Baton Rouge in terms of their feature films. They're jam-packed. Shreveport just wrapped the television series Salem, which has been it's gotten wildly successful.
That's with the witches?
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
And Lafayette is just chugging along with their own independent film. So across the state, we're looking pretty good. And then don't forget Duck Dynasty in Monroe.
Oh, is it? Dynasty?
Yes. Duck Dynasty is in Monroe,
Oh, that's
West
right.
Monroe.
My homeboys. That's right. I'm from Marouge, a little town near
There you go.
near Monroe.
Yeah.
We're gonna. As we were talking, and some people who were working on my show, you knew them, and I'd like for you to tell us the most gratifying part of your job. What has it been working in the?
You know, you would think it would be meeting movie stars or going to LA and securing projects. Honestly,
Sounds pretty good to me.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. The most satisfying part of my job is bringing jobs to people in Baton Rouge and the surrounding parishes. And with Mayor Holden's successful work development program, we've been able to do that. And that has been unbelievable.
That says a lot about what kind of person we have dealing with our film commission here. Thank you again, Liza, for being here. It's wonderful to see you again.
Thank you.
Today we brought you very hot topics. What called Jihad wars, the holy wars, which some people disagree with that name. But we've talked about ISIS. We've talked about the group of Hamas. We've talked about Fatah. And we've talked about a lot of things going on in the Middle East. And hopefully us shining a light on it will give you more of an understanding of what's going on in the Middle East. Then we lightened it up and went to the film commissioner. So that was a nice take from that very heavy subject. I want people to always remember that between every black and white issue, there are shades of gray. And when I saw this as a little girl, if everyone lit just one little candle, what a bright world this would be. So I'll ask each one of you to go out and to light a candle and try to inform people of what you've learned here. That's what we're trying to do, is to instill positive images about every situation. We take a point, a counterpoint. That's why you saw a rabbi sitting next to a Muslim, and then we had a Christian on the other side talking about what's going on in the Middle East. Again, in black and white, there are always shades of gray.